You ever had someone say something to you that technically sounds confident, but just sits wrong in your soul? That's kind of where this episode begins. So, I recently shared a short about what boundaries look like for me right now. Simple things like drinking my water every day, journaling every evening, making my skincare a priority, gentle movement. And someone commented something along the lines of boundaries require someone else. You mean habits. Listen, I sat with that, not because I suddenly doubted myself, but because it made me think about how often we reduce lived experience down to definitions and miss the point entirely. But today, I want to talk about that. Not to argue, not to prove anyone wrong, but to widen the conversation. Because sometimes being technically right still misses the truth.
So grab your mugs and take a seat because it's time to spill the tea.
Here's the thing. Yes, habits are behaviors we repeat. Yes, boundaries are often discussed in the context of other people. But that definition is incomplete because some of the most important boundaries that you will ever set aren't with other people. They're with yourself, with systems, with expectations, with the version of you that learned to override your own needs. And when we reduce boundaries to only interpersonal conflict, we miss how burnout actually happens. Burnout doesn't come from one person crossing a line. It comes from hundreds of small moments where we don't protect ourselves. So when someone says that's not a boundary, that's a habit, what I hear is a narrow frame of mind, not a correction. And I don't need to dwell there because my body already knows the difference. This is where I want to pivot because this part matters. A boundary is a decision, like saying my well-being matters. Habit is the practice. You're saying, here's how I prove this to myself every day. Boundaries create the space. Your habits fill that space. Without boundaries, habits don't stick. They feel like chores, guilt trap, and one more thing to fail at. And that's why so many people say things like, I can't stick to routines. I always fall off, or I start strong and then I burn out. And that's because they're trying to build habits without first deciding that they're allowed to protect their own energy. That sound familiar? When I say drinking water is a boundary, I don't mean the water itself is magical. I mean the boundary is me saying, I am not going to ignore my body anymore. When I say journaling is a boundary, I don't mean that every page I write is profound, because it's not. What I'm saying is I make space to process daily instead of carrying that into the next day. When I say that skincare is a boundary, I'm not talking about vanity. I'm talking about slowing down, treating myself like someone worthy of that care. Those are internal boundaries. The habits are just how they show up. Let's talk about why habits actually stick, because that's where the conversation can get interesting. Habits stick when you believe that you're worthy of consistency. You're not constantly overriding your needs. The habit supports your nervous system instead of fighting it. If your internal dialogue is, I should do this, or I'll do this when I'm less busy, or I'll do this once I've earned it, that's not a habit problem. That is a boundary problem. You haven't decided that your care is non-negotiable yet. And this can be especially true in education, caregiving, and helping professions, at least in my opinion. A lot of our boundaries aren't with individuals. They're with systems that will take everything you give and still ask for more. The boundaries look like logging off, creating routines that protect your body and your time, choosing sustainability over constant output, stepping back before your body forces you to. But that pause that I took back in October, that was a boundary. And then the massage that I got in December, that was a response to listening to my body sooner instead of later. The habits came after the decision to set a boundary. I think people get uncomfortable when boundaries aren't framed as confrontation, because internal boundaries, that requires reflection. They ask, where am I abandoning myself? What am I pushing through that doesn't need pushing? What would happen if I stopped explaining myself? And not everyone is ready for that. But if you're listening to this, you probably are. If you've been trying to build better habits and you're feeling like you're failing, I want you to consider this instead. What boundary needs to come first? Not a planner, not a routine overhaul, not discipline, just one decision internally that says I'm allowed to care for myself without justification. The habit will grow from there, from that decision. Now, take a breath with me and ask yourself, where am I trying to force a habit? What I really need is boundary. No fixing, no judging, just noticing. That is enough for today. Thank you for spending this moment with me. Remember, boundaries don't have to be loud to be real, and habits don't have to be perfect to be meaningful. Take what you need, leave the rest, and meet yourself where you are.